see a lot of breathwork practices to be cyclic. Obviously, we breathe in, we breathe out. But also, as we engage in the practice, we are connecting a lot of different systems, all of which are symbiotic. We are a composite of many different systems working in concert. But I think we often switch our mind off to the ones that are running automatically and therefore lose control or lose our influence over them, or all becomes very subconscious. So the cycles that I'm referring to is obviously breathing in and out, moving, juicing our energy body. Those I guess would be the main three. There's obviously lots of others. The mind can come in and all sorts of other bodies. But I think those three together, we breathe, and your sound can come in as well, expression. But if we really just focus on the breath, and we focus on the movement of our body as we're doing this action, and we use it as a chance to reconnect, to tap back into, reactivate that energy. In different practices, they call it different things. It can come in the form of chi in qigong, or you might call it prana, like the life force in yoga. In kundalini, they talk about this golden snake, or the spiral of energy, often latent in our body, which gets released as it uncoils and activated through these practices. However you conceive of it, it's about somehow engaging in that space. If you look at the work of what's his name, Joe Dispenza, in his book Becoming Supernatural, he talks about being able to use the imagination as kind of an entry point, because it's not always obvious how to move chi. It's kind of this philosophic, esoteric concept. It's not as easy as gripping and changing the muscles or the breath. So sometimes visualizations can help, because it's the imagination poured into then leading the energy. A simple example is arousal. Our attention can go into someone, something, and we can become aroused, and the energy actually shifts, and then the physicality shifts. And so there's a very real connection between the mind and the body. In that instance, it's very clearly illustrated. And so we can really allow that, even if we're not really sure. For example, with the microcosmic orbit breath, we're breathing up our spine and then up to our crown and then over and down through our vital organs and connecting that governing and central meridian. Is it really palpable, tangible? Can you sense and feel that chi rising up through your spine, maybe affecting the cerebrospinal fluid? Like, that's a very internal shift, and we're not always as tuned into those kind of internal shifts as would be beneficial if we were going to have true symbiotic homeostasis, that balance where we just decide to heal things, to have detox happening, to have cancer stop, or any of these things which go on below our awareness in some kind of automatic subconscious level. So, point being, we use the imagination in the cyclic breath coming up and down, governing central, these energy channels or meridians in our body, just imagining it coming up, focusing around and then coming down. That takes us a step toward actually having the sensation of it. And so these are all these different parts. Like I said, there's the breath, there's the movement, there's the chi, and then there's this imagination kind of phase. And I believe that cyclic practices, like time itself, have this beautiful way of having us land again, having us reach out and connect with a certain thing. Time, in my mind, is this continual recreation of everything, and then destruction and recreation and destruction. From a game designer's point of view, that's how we render things on the screen. You find the player's position and then update it, and then you find the player's position and you update it. So every frame is a complete re-rendering, a recreation of the whole world, the whole universe. And so in that way, time is teaching us to be present, because with every single second, we're tapping back into now. And so with this practice, with each cycle of the practice, we're tapping back into the connection of these different bodies or elements of ourselves, these different channels of energy. And therefore it's training us again and again and again to have more connection so we can wield, we can have some direct influence over these spaces. And of course, the byproduct is we have a system that flows. And most, if not all, systems require some sense of flow and exchange in order to remain healthy and alive. So the task now is to develop some kind of cyclic practice based on some kind of breath, movement, and energy being cycled with the imagination or the mental aspect, if it helps cycle the chi, the prana, with the intention of being present and at the same time unminded. So it's this really interesting thing. We think, I'm awake, I'm present, because I'm thinking, I'm problem solving, I'm controlling, I'm engaged. That's not the only way to be present, obviously. So it's this conscious awareness of being in practice, but this detached mental aspect where we are thinking or maybe going towards more knowing without the mechanics of the mind. We come into, and that's where it can start to feel like a bit of a trance state, because we are in this mesmerized, that pulse of the universe, and we don't have to think anymore, especially because we're looping it, we're doing it over and over, and I think the mind or brain or whatever very quickly puts things onto automatic. So you do come into this unthinking space, but I guess I'm encouraging you to still stay present with it so you can have this conscious connection and activation of these things, because they're already on automatic. You're already breathing and diffusing the oxygen through your blood, and detoxing, your kidneys are working, and all these things are happening below our awareness. The point being, these practices are bringing us to a high level of sentience, of feeling, of connection with these aspects of our holistic system. So be present with it, but allow yourself to go into that unthinking stage as well. And I guess the best way to really find that sweet spot is for yourself to experience it. So as an example, I'm going to use this Kundalini practice where you can be in a cross-legged position, or sometimes it's nice to go onto your knees for the reason that I find it easy to have a straight spine on my knees, applying all the other basics that we've gone over in previous sessions, where you're really allowing some mobility in the joints. So you're not locking the lower back in an arc. You're rising up through the spine, allowing the shoulders to be open and back, opening up the heart, drawing the head up from the crown, chin sometimes slightly coming back, feeling that alignment so that this energy channel of the central nervous system can really exchange and flow, connecting all our energy centers. And with this particular exercise, we are bringing the hands up above our heads, or just one head, and we are interlocking the fingers in what I call pistol grip. So the index fingers are straight and the other fingers are clasped, thumbs interlocked. Above the head, biceps coming in towards the ears. And here it's very easy to clench the shoulders in a shrug, just relaxing the shoulders, arms still extended, pointing up above the crown. And then the breath technique. So I'm guiding in this example, and by all means use this example as your loop, but also I completely encourage the experimentation and development of your own looping pattern. But this is just as an example. In this particular technique, the breath is the bellows breath, the fire breath technique applied to the lower abdomen, lower dantian, drawing the belly button in towards the spine on the exhale. And sometimes this can be almost counterintuitive or flipped to what you might naturally want to do. So you can practice by holding your hands here on the belly, the sacral area, and making sure that they're going in on the exhale. And when you feel you've got that synced up, so you're breathing in and out through the nose, on the exhale, the belly's coming in, and just imagine it's kind of like bellows. You're squeezing, drawing in from these lower energy centers or chakra points, applying root lock as well, mula bandh, so the PC muscles, pelvic floor, perineum, between the sex organs and the anus, that's sort of being juiced, squeezed, drawing up into the torso. activating those energies, really sometimes feel it tingling up the spine. And then also softening so that energy from these lower energy centers can also dissipate and be distributed up into the rest of the nervous system, replenishing the body. And you loop through that. So really focusing on the exhale and the inhale naturally happening in response. You can apply the root lock throughout if you like, just holding it, building up that strong pelvic floor, or you can squeeze. Just try both and just learn. There's many lessons in all techniques. And so coupled with that breathing, we're doing these hands I mentioned before, above the head, biceps to the ears, softening of the shoulders, straightening of the spine. And feeling this expansion and lengthening on the exhale, where you're not really lifting your shoulders, but because you're breathing and drawing the belly in, your whole torso is kind of coming up and you're having the energetic intention to expand upwards. So you are kind of pulsing up on the exhale. And repeat, 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 repeat. Really finding that space where you can meet the yang, the solidity, the resistance, and be present with it and feeling how you can soften. For me, particularly in the heart, I get this panic sensation of I want to stop. It's just uncomfortable. The continuing, there's a snap point. And that's where the threshold release techniques are so important. Like, having a cold shower and letting the body not brace, but welcome in the sense of cold. When you're fasting, feeling that acidic, needing hunger and softening the belly. Any of these things which can bring you to a point of I can't do this anymore, I need to block against and resist it, and softening. Once again, like with the breath work, the rebirthing breath work, we come to that point of death. Like my body starts to seize up like a coffin. It becomes very solid, but beyond that artificial wall, which seems to be death or pain or failing, is actually more life and success and love and winning and integration and connection and inspiration and coming home and remembering our innate capacity, that well of energy that we always have accessible to us beyond these artificial limitations. So feeling yourself come to that point where you can't anymore, and how can you soften while maintaining the practice? So it's active surrender. It's not just softening everything. You're still doing the practice, but finding the internal parts like the heart or the gut or whatever is clenching up. And how can you soften and allow that panic or that emotion to diffuse through the body while continuing your practice? And when you feel that melting, that for me, in my personal experience, was where I stepped beyond the artificial threshold and felt, wow, there is no tension on my shoulders anymore. There's no pain. There's no panic on my heart. This is actually really comfortable. I could do this forever. Coming to a point where I literally couldn't do it for another minute, I suddenly could do it for another 10 minutes. So that is the aspiration. Find your own looping practice. You can take this practice here if you like as a starting point, or develop your own that couples breath with movement with chi, and loop it and loop it and loop it until you come to a point where you're not controlling with the mind anymore. You're just present, but in the natural rewilded pulse of it. And explore that to the point where probably there will be a physical, if not mental, threshold. And then finding what is restricting or bracing against, resisting, and allowing just that part to soften while the physical practice continues. And then you're there. You're in that space, which is a space of much learning and remembering and knowing. Just knowing. That certainty through experience. So enjoy your practice. Thank you for playing, and much respect for developing your own Tao, your own way in the world.
Play.